Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sudbury Interviews. Today we have John Lindsay, a longtime community builder here in Sudbury, and he has founded festivals and has done very lot for the community. And we're going to be talking about all of that today. Before we begin, you can find us on Sudstown and join the conversation. Hey, John, how you doing?
Hey, just great for an old guy. I'm thinking reached this point where you look back and you say, how long have you been around? And well, I've been around since 1937. And incidentally, those of us who were born just before the war, during the war, only make up 5% of the population now. So we are people who are here now, but probably not going to be here for too much longer. So 1937, lived through the war. I was just a kid, but we did the paper drives and collecting toothpaste tubes and fighting off the Germans and the Japs and that sort of thing as we were kids in the playground, going, I got you, you know, but we weren't really quite aware of what was going on. But my dad went overseas and I know when he came back, I could hardly recognize him because he'd been gone for a while. But anyway, those are things that we can remember from those days. And then, of course, time moved on. I was basically raised both in Canada and the States, had dual citizenship for a while. And but most of my high schooling took place in Oakville. I grew up there, and I wasn't well back then. Only a very small percentage of people went on to university. We only had one community college, Ryerson, in Toronto at that time. Well, I didn't do that. I just went out and tried to get a job. And I had taken some electronics in high school, and I thought, okay, I've got to be an electronics technician. Unfortunately, I'm colorblind, so I got turned down by Bell and Westinghouse and some of the larger firms. So I went to our local radio station and said, you got a job, I can be an engineer, what they called the technical people there. And they said, no, we don't have that. But, you have a pretty decent voice. Have you ever thought of becoming an announcer? And no, I hadn't, but I thought, hey, a job's a job. So I worked there and I went to teachers college part time. And I got my experience in teachers college. I directed a few plays and had some fun there. I actually taught in a one room school, but I found out I really didn't like kids. So I decided that maybe I should try that other occupation and become an announcer. And I went and did an audition and I got hired. They sent me to Timmins, and Timmins, a great spot. My friends, my relatives, anyone in Oakville didn't know where Timmins was. Neither did I. But I went up there, just a great town, more activity at night than there was during the daytime. It was terrific. And I worked there, and then I went out to Newfoundland, worked out there in TV, went to Kingston, worked there, came back to Timmins, worked in radio there and TV, and worked in North Bay, a few other places, I think 13 stations altogether. And then I decided I had to get serious after about 10 years of doing that. So I applied for the government and became one of the workers at Employment and Immigration. And I got hired in Ottawa, but they sent me to Sudbury. Why did they do that? I mean, I could have gotten a job in Kingston where I was working at that time in TV. But nope, they sent me to Sudbury. The bleak and barren Sudbury at that time. I know I used to
Mm.
fly over on my way to Timmins when I worked there, and you'd look down and you'd see this blackened landscape. And that's where they sent me. Anyway, I remember going up near the Memorial Hospital and looking out over the landscape, and it was all black and rocky, and wow, sort of depressing. But I thought it had lots of potential. Anyway, I worked there for a little while, and then I got a part-time job at CHNO Radio back then. Did some stuff at CKSO as well, and I got hired. But as I was doing both stations, and there were competitors, I had to change my name, so I changed it to Jack Richmond, which interestingly enough was John. I changed to Jack, and I was talking to one of the announcers at the time, and we were just joking back and forth. And I said, "Well, here I am working in radio. I'm never going to be a rich man." And he said, "That's it. You're going to be Jack Richmond." So I thought that's pretty good. It's a good name. So Some people said, "Well, isn't that a Jewish name? Are you Jewish?" And I said, "No, I'm nothing. I'm just a voice." But anyway, so that went on for 25, 30 years, doing that sort of thing. And then I volunteered for cable for about 15 years because I always liked TV. Because in TV, that there's people on the studio floor and there's also people in the control rooms. They're there. When you're in radio, you're in a little booth by yourself, and you wonder, do
Mm.
people really are they really listening? Well, I knew they were there because the figures show that on my Sunday morning program, which I did for about 25 years, I knew there was about 30,000 people listening. But you don't know that when you're stuck in your little booth. So you're there, but you're playing music for yourself then. But anyway, it was lots of fun. But at the same time, I was very much involved in local activity. In Kingston, I was chair of the Safety Council. I was doing other volunteer work because that's what they wanted you to do, and it's something really we need to get businesses more involved to encourage their employees to become involved because we really need volunteers. But 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 that's another subject. So basically, wrapping up this history, I got involved in different activities. I was really interested in politics, and I followed politics. And I actually ran for a couple of elections, and I did get elected to the school board. I was chair of the school board for a while, and then I got involved with things in the community that I thought needed to be addressed. And so, if you run for election, you actually get people to listen to you because otherwise you're just a voice out there. But if you put your name forward, then you go to meetings and the candidates speak out on various things. And sometimes people listen to you. So that was basically it. And I worked for almost 30 years for employment and immigration. And then I went on the school board for a while. And then I became involved with my wife in a financial advisory firm. And that's where I am at, at the present time. Our business deals with about 500 or 600 clients, and we help them with their financial situation, taxes, and that sort of thing, which is good because people need to be more than ever concerned about their financial state because retirement comes on. We have 42,000 people in Sudbury who are over the age of 65. They're either in retirement or soon. We have 50% of our population is over the age of 50. So we're an aging population. And our city officials, staff, and council have to look at that demographic because everybody's moving, getting older. This means your tax base is not growing. We know the mayor wants to increase our population to 200,000. That is an enviable goal. However, you got to consider the fact that we have 42,000 of us who are over 65 who aren't going to be here forever. One of the most active businesses in town is the funeral business because we're dying out, and that's a fact. How do we? And our birth rate is not great. So are we going to be saved by immigrants? Hard to say. We've had a surge of immigrants, but that's been brought in students largely, and we can see what's happening now. The government's cutting back on the immigrants. Community colleges and universities are complaining that they're going to have to lay off staff because they don't have the number of students. So we faced a housing crisis in large part because we brought in a lot of people that we didn't have housing for. So,
Hmm.
you wonder why don't our political leaders analyze the results of what they do? I mean, it was obvious by, okay, we're going to open up immigration to all these students, well, which is not a bad idea, except for the fact that they're bringing them in the thousands without the proper facilities. We had Cambrian College itself set up a strip mall education stores almost, you might call them, down south, where they taught immigrants such exotic subjects like creative marketing. I mean, you and I can teach creative marketing, but this was so basically they were teaching a lot of immigrants coming in, no fault of their own, but they came in hoping to get some sort of education, which in theory they should take back to their home countries and and do their work back there to help their own countries. But basically, their ultimate goal for many of them, of course, is to stay in the country. So we really need to look at that situation. The government has looked at it, and they have put a bit of a choker hold on it. So we're going to see what happens there. But in the meantime, we're looking at our homeless situation, particularly in Sudbury, and unfortunately, looking at what can be done for the homeless on a short time frame, not looking at 2030, but doing it relatively soon, like Peterborough, Kitchener, Waterloo have done, where they have created homeless hubs where the homeless are looked after in a more humane manner than they are here in Sudbury. So,
Hmm.
why aren't we doing that? Councillor Duke made a motion at the last council meeting to let us look at what Peterborough has done or other communities have done. And it got turned down. Only 5 councillors voted in favor of looking at it even. So, and the staff at the city and some of the higher ups on council say, no, we're doing okay. We're not doing okay. Or otherwise we wouldn't have people in tents all over the city on private land and on public land. Or I walked downtown the other day and I 15 homeless I saw in 3 blocks, including one that was in the hallway of the YMCA. And there were about 4 or 5 underneath. Others were in doorways when I walked along. There was about 5 or 6 who were in the near the provincial building at 199 Larch. So we're not looking after the problem, and we're saying, well, we're going to do something in the future. We're going to do something. Well, the future is here, so let's do it now. So this is, and we talked originally. You introduced me as an advocate. I'm an advocate for the homeless. I'm not an activist. An activist is someone who goes out with signs and says, "Let's do something for the homeless." Well, I really applaud people who do that, but I'm more along the lines of, let's see what we can do actually immediately or within a relatively short time. And I'm sure that businesses, I know my little business here, and my wife's business, and my business, and our daughter, we're the 3 principals here, though we have other staff. But we have said these little tiny homes, the tiny homes that they have in Peterborough and in Kitchener Waterloo, that they're constructed for about $20,000. Our little business is willing to put out $20,000 to build one of these homes. And I'm sure I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm sure that a number of other businesses, the Chamber, we could do that ourselves. We don't even need the city to put out money. The city's gotten money for the homeless, but they seem to be, we don't know what they're doing with it exactly. They have the Lorraine Street project, which is apartments, which is transitional housing, which is more like a halfway house for those homeless that need a little more help. Now, for most of the homeless, just give me a spot where I can lay my head. The people aren't going to steal my stuff. I'm not going to freeze in the wintertime. You know, I'm not going to get too hot in the summertime. So, this is, I hate to use that term, rocket science, but this is not rocket science. This is basic human caring, but we don't seem to be doing that. And, it's very upsetting. Have I given you some idea?
Yeah, that's a really nice history for sure. So I think the first time I met you, John, I was around 20 years old, and playing at
Just, just a kid. Okay.
I was playing at the Blueberry Festival downtown. It was at Memorial Park. Do you remember those days?
Oh yeah, we had great ones. We had Brian Kuzma did a lot of the
Yeah, Brian
recruiting of
Kuzman,
the
Maureen,
entertainment.
and you had
Green
the
Lola.
Sudbury Bear mascot with Sudburina.
Yeah, yeah,
Where
yeah.
did those come from? Those mascots?
Well, the Sudbury Bear that's the second reincarnation, you might say, of the We had an original Sudbury Bear.
Yeah.
Janine, who was the Blueberry Lady, we called her. She had a little blueberry house on Morris Street, I think it was. And she, along with Peter Wong, actually started the Blueberry Festival. The whole history, by the way, is on blueberryfestival.ca. Just a very
Oh,
simple blueberryfestival.ca. You can look up. There's the history there, the what's happened over the years, the climbing up Blueberry Hill, blah blah blah, and everything is on that website. The whole history, and of course the Blueberry Bear the costume is, we had a little fan inside the costume. The fan kept breaking,
Yeah.
so it was a little, it was a little chore to get somebody to go in the. I won't say it's a chore to get them in. It was to get them to stay in because it got pretty hot in there. But we had a number of really great bears. I mean, bear inserts over the years, and for Sudbury bear as well too. But yeah, so that it worked, and of course uh, in the park there, we had a number of organizations who did the pancake breakfast for us. We had many activities going on. We had the dinosaur park out in the valley. We had skied, had their pancake breakfast. Of course, the famous Ukrainian. Uh, uh, I guess I don't want to call it all pancakes because they had crepes and they had blueberry pie and they had blueberry pierogies and they had entertainments. That was something great. We had the activities down there at the market. So there was up to upwards of about 20 different activities happened all the time during the Blueberry Festival. And we're glad to see that the Red Oak Villa has taken it over and they did a great job. It just finished. And we had the famous pie eating contest. How come you never entered our pie eating contest?
I was never asked to.
Oh, darn. Well, next year you're going to have to stick your face in the
Well,
pie.
I interviewed the winner of that just a couple of days ago, Chad Rivette.
Oh, yeah, he's a
It was
star. He's
really
done it.
funny.
Yeah.
He said,
Well,
I knew I was going to win because you invited a 300-pound guy who loves food to, to be a part of it. So that was
it can be. I know. I think that was. I did it once, and that was enough. Believe me. The one time I did it, they had a lot of meringue on top of it, and
Yeah.
it was a pretty sickening experience. The only other experience I can think of that sort of equaled it in being messy was I know out in the valley they had a greased pig contest. And some of us from the media at that particular time were invited to wrestle the greased pig. Yeah, that was
Hmm.
an experience that I wish I could forget. But anyway,
So, John, who has the mascots now? Like who? Because
well,
I
the mascots are both in in I guess under the control. I don't know if they could get out and do rampage anywhere, but the Red Oak Villa Autumnwood is
okay,
they have taken over all the material that we had for the
right.
Blueberry Festival, and next year they are just talking uh, to Janine, who is I guess one of the coordinators there at the Red Oak Villa. She told me just on the weekend that they're going to print up T-shirts next year with a blueberry bear on it, so you'll be able to buy T-shirts.
So the Blueberry Bear and Sudburina only make an appearance once a year
Yeah, well,
in the summer now because they used to be at
well,
the market on the weekends when I would play there.
yeah. Well, it now they are out for loan. We used to loan them out uh, for activities, and we did, of course, have them married officially on the Cortina or the William Ramsey, the boat. It was Rob, the skipper there. He
Rob,
went
yeah,
to the
Captain Rob.
Yeah, he went to the 12-mile limit in Lake Ramsey and married the bears. We have I think the ceremony is on is on the blueberryfestival.ca website too. Yeah. Yeah, so we were thinking of having a baby bear, but yeah, but unfortunately the two bears sleep during the wintertime and don't do anything else. So
Right.
we, we never got a
That's
bear.
funny. That's good. Yeah. That's why we never see them in the winter. They're hibernating,
Of course, yeah. That's why I
right?
think that I've always thought that we people us people should have considered being bears instead, because when you think about a bear can swim like crazy, a bear can outrun us, a bear can climb trees, a bear can get some fun out of life by chasing humans occasionally or just appearing, and you sleep all winter. Wouldn't that, I mean, what's the matter with that as a lifestyle? So we should be bears instead of people. I just thought I'd throw that in.
And I have to give you credit for something is another thing, John, because do you remember when we were talking about that new website project that I was developing? It's called Sudstown. Well, it was called Square at the time, Sudbury Square.
Oh yeah.
Well, you helped me understand something fundamental about it that I wasn't thinking about. And it was the fact that you had mentioned that it was all the same feed. Everybody looks at the same feed, and when we're on other social media, everybody has their own feed. But on Sudstown, it's all the same feed, so everybody's looking at the same thing. And you had mentioned something about the last time we had that was on old TV programs when we were all looking at the same thing. So a light bulb went off in my head because I never thought of it that way. And I was like, he's absolutely right. It's a way to dissect it in a way that I never even considered. So
Well, we have a very, fractured universe with respect to media, entertainment. At one time, when I worked in Kingston, I worked in Newfoundland, St. John's and Grand Falls, and Timmins and North Bay. What did we have for entertainment visually? One TV station. One. One. So everybody watched the same thing. Obviously, if it was so the next day, if you're talking to people, what did you say? Did you see the nature of things last night? Did you see Bonanza? For people who remember back that far, we all watched the same thing. Now, the chances of somebody watching the same thing the next day when you say, uh, what you watched last night, the chances are of them seeing the same thing that you watched, yeah, very remote. Now, I don't know about. And if you go on YouTube, look at the choices you have on YouTube. My God, it goes on forever, and you could spend your whole life watching everything. So yeah, so getting the message out, even here in Sudbury, where you got 7 radio stations, right? So even trying to communicate, if you're an advertiser, it's very difficult. You got a certain budget. At one time, you had CHNO and CKSO, and that was it for the radio. And we lobbied for years to get a CBC here, and finally got it here.
hmm.
And then we had to lobby to get a CBC, both CBC's feeds. So it's we're sort of architects of our own current situation, I guess. But so how do you know? I think if you're running a good morning show here in Sudbury now, I guess if you're really lucky, we got 5 or 6 thousand people listening out of 160,000 population.
is that? Do you think our population is still that? Because I was meant to ask you, what do you think is an accurate estimate of our population now here in Sudbury, Greater Sudbury?
Well, it depends who you talk to. If you're talking to some at City Hall, we're closer to 180,000, right?
Yeah.
If you're talking to others, if you have to go back in time, like I've been here since 1966. When I came here, I was in the Benvenuto apartments, the Commodore apartments across the road. The Commodore apartments were empty, empty. There was no one in them because they had overbuilt. So we went from population swings from 170 to 150,000. So those swings back and forth. So we really don't know until an actual census takes place, and we can see. But in a sense, you can't totally rely on, let's say, housing statistics because of the fact that we have, not only in Sudbury, but across the country, our divorce rate is pretty close to 50%. So when people divorce, you've split one household into two. And generally, that means that there's 2 homes, well, there used to be one, or the need for 2 apartments instead of one, or whatever, right? So you just can't look around and say, well, golly gee, look at the population. There's such a housing crisis. People can't find a house to live in. Well, maybe it's because the number of people who are not living together need a place of their own, and they have absorbed the available housing. So it's hard to figure that equation exactly right. So are we 150? Well, we're nowhere above that. Are we 160? Maybe. Are we above that? 160? Are we 170? I don't know. This year is going to be a census year, so it's going to be interesting to
Hmm.
tell. Also, if you bring into your community upwards of 5,000 students, well, then you begin to count them as your residents. Well, that inflates the figure as well, too. So, I wouldn't like to go out on a limb and say, okay, this is what our situation is. We have 167.5 people, I mean, I'd just be guessing too, but people use population figures to their own advantage as well. Do we have, when you look at some of the major industries, we know that our two major industries are civic employees, people working for the government, people working in healthcare. Mining is still up there, probably number three. You have a large number in the educational area. So you have these various sectors that basically, since the time that we had a loss of about 15,000 in the mining sector, the healthcare and education and government employment has picked up. They've absorbed a lot of that. Retail, very very active, but that's and the hospitality as well. As for businesses, Sudbury is a strip mall economy when it comes to business.
What does that mean?
Well, all you have to do is drive along any one of our streets, and what do you see? Strip mall after strip mall after strip mall. Most of them full. You don't see anybody.
Hmm.
You don't see retail downtown. No, you don't. But where do you see it? I know I didn't dawn on me until I saw some new strip malls being built in the last few years. And I'm thinking, what are these entrepreneurs doing? What are these builders doing? They're building, strip malls. Well, there's no businesses. Yes, there are within, sometimes even before they're finished. People have signed up to be in the strip mall. Why are they in a strip mall? Very simple. Why aren't they downtown? Because of three. I call it the three C's. The three C's: content, cost, and convenience. One, there has to be a content. There has to be a reason why you go someplace. There's an entertainer like Danny Starr entertaining at a certain spot. People want to see him. Otherwise, they're going to go there, right? And there has to be, the second factor is cost. How much is it going to cost me to get there? The distance, and what's it going to cost when I get there for parking? And the other is convenience. So how is that solved by going downtown? Not very much, because well, first of all, you got to find the content. A lot of it's disappeared. But then you have to look at the cost. You go downtown, you're obviously going to have to pay for parking, except on the weekends and after 6 o'clock. Or convenience. How convenient is it going to be? Well, with the strip mall, you drive right to the door. The cost is nothing. And you're gone there because you can get watch repaired, you can get a meal, you can get a burrito, you can get whatever. The strip malls have basically everything. Just go to Eddie's. He's in a strip mall, right?
Hmm.
Uh, so the strip malls have basically, and the rent is a lot cheaper than it is even going into the mall. Malls are very expensive if you're a retailer.
Yeah.
Plus the fact, if you're going to a mall, like me, I'm using a cane now because my back went out with arthritis. So I got to go to the mall and I got to park. Oh my God, I got to park this far away. I got to hobble into the mall and I got to hobble around there. Whereas I go to a strip mall, I just drive right in. Oh, I can go to Mick's restaurant on Falconbridge Road, drive right in. My
Yeah.
dentist downtown, okay, let's say Cup of Joe moving out of downtown. Why? Because they can't stand being harassed
Mm.
by individuals who want to hand out or just want to bug you. Uh, or Bill Crumplin, Bill's leaving downtown because for that, plus a number of other
Oh,
reasons.
you mean the Nowhere Public
The
House?
nowhere place that's moving out, right?
Yeah.
My dentist is moving. They're looking for a spot outside of the downtown. My barber, same thing. They want to get out because the downtown is dirty. I'm president of the CARP organization, Canadian Association of Retired Persons, also friendly to seniors. None of our members want to go downtown. I talked to some people in Chelmsford, Zilda, Lively. Have you been downtown lately? No, I never go downtown. Why? For those reasons. It's dirty. They don't think it's safe. And there's no reason to go downtown. Now, at nighttime, you have restaurants down there, but I know that Bill, when he was quoted in the paper the other day, he told the story of one lady, I guess, downtown with her gang. We went for dinner, and there's a homeless person urinating in front of their table on the street. Okay, they're not going down to town again, are they? So
Hmm.
you have these now. On downtown will never have a chance until they build that homeless hub over in Energy Court, a spot for the homeless to go, so they're not wandering around downtown. Other cities have done it. Why aren't we doing it? Ask the mayor. The
Yeah.
mayor's saying, well, once we move the arena over there, it's going to change the downtown completely. No, we have people on who are working for the city now on that development, saying the development's going ahead, but there won't be any parking. Well, so how does that satisfy your three C's? Convenience. There's no convenience. You don't have any parking. You're going to have to find the same parking you found before. Only there's going to be less of it.
Yeah.
So I mean, don't these people open their eyes and see the reality of the situation they're facing? First of all, let's look at the arena. I've gone into the arena many times over the past couple of months. I've been looking for the cracks. I've been looking for the seats that are damaged. I've been looking for the hospitality area that's no longer hospitable. I'm looking at the special seats that Burgess put in. And they're all in pristine condition. So we're tearing what is probably the best hockey arena in the NHL or the OHL. As a matter of fact, NHL players were there a couple of months ago. They said it was great. So we're going to tear that down and build an event center. We are averaging about 3,500 people going to the Wolves games. If you what's the percentage we'd have to bring in for the Wolves to bring it up to 5,800 to fill those 5,800 seats? You'd have to increase the attendance by 82% to fill the event center, and as it's considered for, and arenas are pretty much passe now because, as you know, the big acts don't come anymore because, well, the big acts, Taylor and Shania and the rappers don't come to arenas like Sudbury. That's for sure.
Hey, John. We've run out of time for this episode. I'd love to have you back. I want to thank you sincerely for for coming on, and we can do another one. I love talking to you. Your voice to me is very soothing, and
Well, I hope I haven't put you to sleep.
no, not at all. It's just that I like to keep them at half an hour. That's like the
Oh yeah,
mandate.
definitely. Well, the average, one of the things we should mention just before we end is the attention span of people nowadays is extremely limited. So, we hope that we have said enough controversial things or a degree of awareness that may have kept them awake for this half hour anyway.
Yeah, great talking to you today, John.
You too, Danny. Take care.
Bye bye.